Perumal Murugan he's a Tamil novelist, short story writer, and a poet. And he's written a number of books. And since he writes in Tamil, people like you and I'm assuming you don't understand or read Tamil either. If you do, I would suggest that you read the original works. But for the others, those of us who read in English, I would say that even the translations are quite beautiful. Of course, when it comes to the poetry part, it's not as charming as it is in the original work, but still, at least when it comes to the essays, the short stories, and the novels, the translation works pretty well. So today, the work that I'm going to talk about is not really a novel or poetry, and it's not even very much popular. It's a collection of essays written by Murugan as a tribute to his mother, as a tribute not only just to his mother, but also, I guess, to all the strong, independent women out there. How they wrestle through life in their day-to-day activities, the things they do, the extraordinary things they do in the ordinary lives, and how casually they do all this heroic task of raising kids, of working, of even surviving in a society which doesn't really encourage independent women. So these are really simple essays talking about the simplest of things and how his mother was doing certain things, traveling, cooking food, spending time with him, talking to him, and while doing all this, she's also giving really good values to her child as the child is growing up. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to read one of these essays in this podcast. It's called The Story of the Intestine Meat. So without any delay, let me start. Amma did not allow cooking to take up all her attention or time. The stove would burn as she went about feeding the cows and goats. She could do multiple tasks at once, and it was hard to tell which of them was the most important. What seemed like an additional task to an onlooker could actually be the most pressing one, and cooking was never an all-consuming task for her. She largely cooked with firewood that emitted only a little smoke. There were palm or coconut sheds to light the stove. You could use palm fronds too, but they burn out quickly. So Amma only used the sheds. She always came back home with a couple of them, adding to her endless supply. After lighting the stove, she chose pieces of firewood that would burn longer and stacked them so that air could pass through. To keep the fire going, she only had to slightly nudge the wood as she passed by. Embers from the long-lasting firewood would fall inside the stove and keep it warm even when the fire went out. Amma would soak rice in the right amount of water, place it on the stove, and add a couple of pieces of firewood. She then covered the vessel with a plate, kept a blowpipe on it, and left to attend to other tasks. When the rice boiled over, the weight of the pipe would keep the lid in place. Every now and then, she would lift up the lid a little to let in some air, and that would settle the boiling rice. By the time the fire went out, the rice would be cooked. It would continue to soften in the heat of the embers, soaking up the remaining water, and there would be no need to drain the starch. Amma would let the cooked rice sit on the stove while she finished her other chores. She also made porridge, millet rice, and even curries in this unique manner of cooking with embers. Amma would mash the lentils, add vegetables, place the dish on the stove, add the firewood, and that was it. The vegetables would cook in the fire from the wood and then in the heat from the embers. She did not have to hover around and tend to the pot. Amma's cooking was simple. She hardly used any spices apart from chilies to flavor her curries. Quite frequently, she made kadai sal with mashed vegetables and lentils. When she made a porial of sautéed vegetables, it would double up as a curry to be mixed and eaten with rice. She took care of pairing different kinds of rice with the right kind of curry. Pearl millets served with parupu, kuzambu, or mashed and seasoned lentils, and kutu, or boiled and seasoned vegetables, was delicious. Millet's porridge was only served with broad beans or mashed greens such as panai or kumiti. The rice of paddy paired well with all curries, but shallots were an essential ingredient in any curry. Amma would coax shallots to yield different flavor profiles. Some vegetables are meant to be sautéed while others ought to be curried. Ladies' fingers should not be cooked with lentils but curried separately. There is no such thing as broad beans sambar. The vegetable is best sautéed. Mashed lentils should be spiced with red chilies, not green. Coconut should be used only in certain dishes. It is an important addition to the greens of sunberry. Should be ground when added to meat curries eaten with idlis, dosas, and is to be strictly avoided if the curry is meant for rice. Cooking is possible without groundnut oil, but not without castor oil. 2 drops of it must be added when lentils are boiled, and only castor oil can be used to sauté shallots. Amma invented her own little cooking rules. She was also precise with the amount of food she cooked. There were no leftovers, and the curry she made lasted just one meal. We were always left asking for more. To avoid wasting even the curry stuck to the vessel, Amma would put some rice inside, mix it up with the dregs, and feed us each a handful of this. It tasted like heavenly amudam. We finished Amma's food by wiping the vessel clean and licking the last of it off our fingers. There was no other way to eat it. When we were disappointed about not having more to eat, Amma would say with a smile, "The food will taste good only if there is just enough of it. It will taste even better if there is a little less." I apply this, one of Amma's important cooking principles, in all aspects of my life to enhance it. Our entire family was a slave to Amma's parupu kuzambu. My father and elder brother were crazy about it and asked her to make it every day. It was their favorite, even though her other curries, whether of bitter gourd or lady's fingers or bottle gourd, they all tasted good as well. No matter who came home, Amma always made parupu kuzambu. My brother's children and mine visited her especially to eat it. Everyone in my family knew how to cook. Men from agriculture families, they usually do. I have watched Amma make her parupu kuzambu many times, and even got the recipe from her. But I've never been able to recreate the taste of her cooking. The magic was in her hands. What we call kai pakuvam, it means is just the magic of her hands. Even today, when my wife makes this curry, she asks, isn't it somewhat like what Athai used to make? All of us who attempt to make it only reproduce the flavor somewhat. The best of it was lost with Amma's hands. Once, when I was visiting Amma, a student of mine who was then a professor in a private college came to meet me, and Amma made lunch for us. He later wrote in an essay, I've never had such tasty sunberry curry in all my life. Amma had cooked it in a mud pot atop a firewood stove. I can still savor the taste of it deep inside my heart. She received many such compliments for her culinary skills. Each of us claims our mother's cooking is the best, perhaps because we grow up eating it. Even today, I think of Amma's cooking whenever I eat. When I see a vegetable, I cannot help but wonder how she would have cooked it. Though I like tasting all sorts of dishes, one needs new experiences even with food. It is Amma's cooking that dominates my taste buds and my heart even today. It would be incomplete to speak of her cooking without narrating this incident. She had allotted 3 rows in our farm for our personal use. There she grew different types of vegetables and creepers, including 4 or 5 brinjal plants, 2 or 3 ladies' fingers plants, a bottle gourd creeper and a pumpkin creeper. There were also a couple of cluster bean creepers which once yielded a bounty of tender beans. Amma brought back a lapful of them for dinner. She chopped them finely, each piece only as long as the lines on the little finger. Then she boiled them and sauteed them with the spiced gram powder. Amma made 2 kinds of hand-pounded podis to use in her cooking. Kadalai mizagu podi and elu mizagu podi, or spiced sesame powder. I always carried 2 bottles of these podis with me when I was a college student and lived away from home. Mixed with warm rice, these podis made for a delicious meal. On days I felt lazy, I made do with the podis rather than make a curry. Many of my friends, too, were in its thrall. Cluster beans sauteed with kadalai mizagu podi tasted out of this world. We used to call it intestine meat because it was that delicious. That day, Amma came back home for a break when the sun grew hot. She made a panful of this porial before heading back to the field again. Dinner was ready, only rice needed to be cooked. Anna had just come back from school and was hungry. He searched the house but found nothing to snack on. Then he took the lid off the pan on the stove outside and found the cluster beans intestine meat. He took some on a plate and found it irresistible. He served himself another helping of it but was left wanting more. One more serving, and another. The pan was wiped clean. Then Anna got scared. He had eaten all of the cluster beans. What about dinner? Amma would thrash him soundly when she returned. Had he not selfishly finished it on his own, he would have asked. He came to a decision. Because it was on the stove outside, Amma would think a dog had eaten it. After all, only he knew what had happened. He made the necessary arrangements and went out to play. When Amma returned after nightfall, She found the pan lying face down on the ground. The lid lay scattered on the other side. Talking about a dog having eaten her boy's favorite intestine meat, she cooked rice and lentils together for a make-do meal. I had tasted it while cooking. It was so good. Did I make it for it to be wasted on a dog? Which dog would have eaten this? Which dog would have been so bold? If I catch hold of it, I'll break its hips. I've seen dogs eat rice, but I've never seen a dog gobble up and wipe clean a vessel full of vegetables. That too one cooked with spices. Looks like it couldn't lay its hand on anything else. I wonder how long it had been starving for. Maybe because these dogs kept calling it intestine meat. And perhaps the other dog too thought it was really the meat. And so she rambled. The dogs we raised were only fed one meal a day at night. We cooked either pearl millets or ragi, especially for them, mixed it with a little curd or milk and fed them. They rarely got any food during the day, unless they managed to hunt something in the fields. On the days we cooked meat, we fed them the bones and the thinner part of the curry mixed with rice. When cows gave birth, we fed the placenta to the dogs. Raw placenta takes time to digest, so the dogs would go without food for the next 2 or 3 days. They have been trained not to enter the house or even the porch. They don't touch the food until we serve it to them in a bowl and give the command to eat or drink. Our dogs did not steal. The dog that had eaten the food must have come from somewhere else, we assumed. Why didn't you leave the food inside? You left it out for the dogs to find and are grumbling now. My father scolded her. I always leave it on the stove. A new dog seems to have emerged from somewhere somehow just to eat this. The dog that had actually eaten the food was not hungry anymore. Without making this obvious, it put up a pretense of eating a little and went to bed immediately. In the middle of the night, my brother felt his stomach rumble. He got up and went to the fields to relieve himself. Some time passed and his stomach rumbled again. Noticing that he had made a few trips to the field, Amma realized that he was the dog that had eaten the cluster beans. Though she was always alert, even when asleep, and the slightest sound would wake her, she continued to lie quietly until it became obvious that Anna's trips to the field were not about to stop. "What is it, my Kannu? Do you have diarrhea? What did you eat? Did you eat anything at school?" She sat up and asked this. "No, Amma," he replied, but did not elaborate. Amma lit the stove and made strong black tea for him. After drinking the tea, he ran to the field once more and then finally fell asleep. Long after dawn, pointing to Anna who was still not awake, Amma said, "The dog that had eaten the cluster beans is still sleeping." When he woke up, everyone already knew. Perhaps Amma told everyone because she was proud that her food was irresistible. Everyone made fun of Anna. News spread through the village and even boys in our school asked him, "Were the cluster beans that your mother cooked so good? We heard you even ate the vessel." For a few days after, everybody called him Satyoda Thinni, the one who ate the vessel with the food. Anna was quite embarrassed. The following week, Amma made the cluster beans intestine meat again. "He ate all of it last week," I yelled. "Don't give him even a bite today." To placate my brother, Amma said, "We should learn to eat everything in moderation. The tongue has no limit. We should train it," and served him some cluster beans. Anna refused to eat it or even look at it. Amma tried to get him to eat it, but he did not relent. Appa said he might have developed an aversion for the dish because it had given him such a bad bout of diarrhea. He will eat it again when he feels better, Appa reasoned. We all ate the cluster beans, intestine meat, poking fun at him throughout the meal. But Anna refused to eat cluster beans after that too. Amma tried to coax him and even forced him, but in vain. If someone spoke of the incident when Amma made cluster beans, she would say with a sigh, "Enough, don't talk about that intestine meat story." We hoped that my brother would change his mind over time, but he never ate cluster beans ever again in his life.